Unless you're on TikTok or Instagram, you may not have seen my series breaking down the 900-page Project 2025 into bite-sized chunks. Those videos currently have 3.8 million views and counting. And so for my first video on YouTube, I thought I would string those 7 short videos together for those people who want to learn a little bit more about the details that are in Project 2025.
I was not prepared for how sick I was going to feel when I did a deep dive into Project 2025. This is the blueprint Republicans want to use to transform the government in order to force every American to live by their standards. I think if even the average Republican voter understood what was in this plan, they would recoil. Today, I want to quickly go over what it is, who's behind it, what their goals are, and how they're going to make this happen. Tomorrow, we're going to dive into what exactly they're going to do. The Heritage Foundation, which is funded and led by billionaire capitalists, are the ones that authored it, and they are working with a coalition of like-minded organizations, including the Trump loyalists, the religious right, book banners, Christian nationalists, anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ, vote suppressors, and of course, anti-regulation folks. They plan to circumvent the Constitution and Congress and strip our freedoms by clearing out a huge number of people who work in the executive branch, so that's all the various agencies, and install loyalists in their place. If you're wondering why Trump and others keep meeting with Viktor Orban, the leader of Hungary, it's because he took a secular democracy and turned it into a religious fascist state. Like or comment on this video so that you see part 2 as soon as I post it. Now that we've talked about who's behind Project 2025, i.e. the same people who's responsible for the Supreme Court we have today, let's dig into the details. The way Project 2025 works is they go agency by agency and change all the things that they need to warp that agency to fit their worldview. In the Department of Defense section, they spend a lot of time going through all the things that they think are woke and trying to get rid of those. They also go after climate science as a reason that the military is using to identify national security threats. But here's something that should chill you to the bone. The military is having some trouble with recruiting right now. So, page 102, improve military recruiters' access to secondary schools and require the completion of the military entrance exam by all students in schools that receive federal funding. They're coming after your kids in high school for military service. Now remember, the Heritage Foundation's goal for the country is that white men are married to white women and they have lots of children. Here's how they're going to transform work to fit that. On page 582, they explicitly say that employers should be able to discriminate against workers for race, gender, religion, disability, sexual orientation, and gender identity. They want to give better health care benefits to women who are trying to get pregnant or want to adopt, and worse health care benefits to people who want birth control pills. Similarly, they want retirement benefits to be better for married people and worse for single people. And they're going to reduce the regulations so that teenagers can have really dangerous jobs. If that sounds familiar, it's because Arkansas has already done this. Like and comment for part 3. I told you I started feeling sick when I was reading Project 2025. The section on the Department of Justice was part of the reason. The overarching context for this section is that the Heritage Foundation wants to turn their DOJ into the ones that set the agenda, as they call it, for state and local law enforcement. They explicitly state if local police aren't arresting the right people, that they will be able to overrule them. This same page talks about how they're going to prosecute DAs they don't like. Think what they might have done to Fani Willis. They're going to strip the independence of the FBI director because they think that person should be accountable to the president. It's pretty clear they don't want the FBI going after white domestic terrorists. On page 550, they even said that the FBI should have no role in stopping the spread of disinformation. They do want the DOJ to be refocused on violent crime. Dog whistle, anyone? The section on enforcing civil rights is super scary. Why? When they talk about ending discrimination, their specific definition of discrimination is DEI. Yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion is what they call discrimination. By the way, they're already working this plan. Just today, MTG came out and said they're going to try to repeal the FACE Act. What does the FACE Act do? It stops you from intimidating people going into abortion clinics or their religious place of worship, which is on page 558. Like and comment for part 4. As I said at the beginning of this series, one of the stated goals of Project 2025 is to promote married, heterosexual families with lots of children. The agency, the Department of Human and Health Services, is how they're going to force this agenda on us. This is the agency they've targeted to take away our reproductive freedoms and a lot of freedoms for the LGBTQ community. This is on top of the things you're already expecting Republicans to do with this agency, namely to get rid of the Affordable Care Act and to switch government health care like Medicare over to the private sector. This plan was written by billionaire capitalists, after all. Right off the bat, on page 450, they state that their goal is promoting married families. They don't want the agency or any of its programs to support single mothers, same-sex marriage, and a whole host of things for the LGBTQ. So like on page 457, when they say they're going to end any programs that undermine family formation, that's what they mean. They are going to end anything that even touches on abortion. They're going to defund Planned Parenthood. They're going to get rid of any medication that has anything to do with abortion, up to and including the morning after pill. They want to reverse the Biden administration's interpretation of EMTALA. That's the law that requires that doctors and hospitals treat women who are miscarrying. And they want the CDC to track abortion data so they can prosecute women. Now, because they want lots of babies, they are going to strip birth control from health plans. I'm just trying to give you a taste of how they're going to wield the federal government to force us to live under Christian nationalism. Like and comment for part 5. Your kids or your grandkids care at all about the environment. You should know that in Project 2025, they talk about climate change like it's a fanatical religion, not a science. They have almost an irrational hatred of climate change. Listen to this from page 108. Progressive social policies that emphasize matters like so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion and climate change. They literally equate climate change with things like gender equality. But it does make sense because these are billionaire capitalists who are heavily invested in oil and gas. Getting rid of climate change shows up in every section. Department of Defense, how dare they use it to figure out where there might be unrest because of climate change? The Department of the Interior might as well have been called Drill Baby Drill. And by the way, if you live in Alaska, you should read that section. They give away the farm when they're talking about Africa in the foreign aid section. The Biden administration's radical global climate policies have cut off billions of dollars of investments to develop clean fossil fuels. Department of Agriculture, they're literally outraged by the notion that protecting the environment would improve the health, nutrition, and lives of Americans. Of course, Department of Energy, they don't like anything having to do with renewable energy. They go after the Environmental Protection Agency because they want to get rid of all of those regulations. It even shows up in the Department of Housing, the Treasury, the SEC, even the Department of Labor. I'm now going to take a few days to get back to some good news and other political content. But if you have any questions about Project 25, leave them in the comments and I might address them when I get back to the series next week. One thing everybody needs to remember about Project 2025 is that it's not just a plan for if the Republicans win the White House in November. This is the plan that they are already enacting in the red states. It's just that they need to win the presidency so that they have control over the entire executive branch to be able to force this agenda onto all the blue states. The Department of Education is a perfect example of this. Now, why does the Heritage Foundation hate the Department of Education? Well, right in their introduction, they talk about the decline started in 1964 when President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act into law. In K through 12, they want to get rid of any discussion of race. And when it comes to higher education, colleges, and universities, they want to get rid of anything that touches on DEI. As we've seen in other ways, they have a very strange definition for, and specifically want to get rid of anything that even touches on LGBTQ. Again, when you look at the states, don't say gay bills that we've seen in Florida or Georgia or Montana. This is also where you see them throwing away the constitutional separation of church and state. They talk about how they're going to protect faith-based colleges, for example. Just today, the Washington Post reported on how multiple red states are working hard to get chaplains into public schools. Stay tuned for tomorrow when I post the conclusion to this Project 2025 series. The last thing I'm going to say about Project 2025 is actually from MAGA. Folks who look like this, who've been coming into my comments section telling me how much they like the plan. Well, the billionaire capitalists at the Heritage Foundation who wrote the plan have been paying very close attention to you too. They've learned that as long as they promise to hate the same people that you hate, they don't have to promise you anything to earn your vote. Republicans voted against giving you any money to recover from COVID, but you voted them back into Congress anyway. They voted against giving your state or your city any infrastructure money, but you voted them back in anyway. Why? Because they said things that made the left mad, and that's all you've ever asked of them. This plan doesn't put any more money in your pocket. There's no help for you if you want to go to a trade school or start up a new business. Maybe you like abortion bans, but because of them, OBGYN doctors are fleeing, leaving people with healthy pregnancies without the care they need. I hope you don't mind contaminated air or water because they're planning to get rid of the regulations because, that gets in the way of them making money. There's no help for you if you get bankrupted from a medical emergency or need your prescriptions to be cheaper. They suck you in with words like school choice and parental rights, but no, it's the Heritage Foundation that will determine what books your kids read and what education they get, and then they're going to ship them off to military service. As white heterosexual Christians, you think this plan is going to make you a part of the ruling class, but you're going to wake up one day and realize you are only pawns of the ruling class.
After watching this series, I hope you have a better sense of what Project 2025 is and what they're hoping to accomplish. If you want to read Project 2025 for yourself, which I would encourage anyone to do, even just the introduction, I've put that link in the description below. If you want to make sure that Project 2025 never gets implemented, first and foremost, we need to keep Republicans out of the White House. That means voting in November and making sure that everyone that feels like you do votes in November as well. And as I get this channel started on YouTube, I hope that you will subscribe and even share these videos with others who you think might enjoy the content that I'm making. See you next time.